Under the twin sons of Boonta Eve, destinies twist as a young boy with storm gray eyes gambles everything not just for freedom, but for family. A single cube spins through the air, deciding between a mother's chains and a brother's future. But the Force doesn't play fair. A Jedi's subtle touch tips fate, freeing the older sibling, not the one expected. Beneath the roar of pod racers and political masks, a quiet bond blooms between the conflicted teen and a veiled queen. Their thoughts brushing like wind over sand. Yet the past won't stay buried, visions whisper, voices echo, and questions rise like heat from Tatooine's dunes. Was he born of chance, or crafted by prophecy? As the younger one races for hope, the elder walks a path lit by dreams and doubt, chased by the shadow of a destiny too large for one soul alone. Is this conversation helpful so far? She was light in human form, gentle even to those who'd owned her. No hate, no vengeance. If someone starved, she would give them her food, so long as her sons had eaten. She had taught them this. The galaxy's true sickness was that no one paused to help, so he made his choice. A quiet flick of his fingers, the Force obeyed, and the cube landed on red. If the boy won the race, their mother would walk free. But beside him, another presence stirred subtle, cloaked in Jedi calm. The cube tipped again, unnaturally. It now showed blue. His heart dropped. He had gambled everything to give his family a future beyond dust and chains. But the Force had chosen a different path. "You won the toss, Outlander," came the sneer, sealing the moment. He snarled with irritation, dismissing the idea that they'd win the race, just as a swarm of dusty kids poured into the hangar alongside Anakin, Padmé, Shmi, and two lumpy Eopies dragging the pod and engines. Glaring, the Toydarian flared his nostrils at Revan, warning him to stop his friend from betting before he ended up owning him too, then buzzed away with a huff, cutting through the crowd of children and halting beside Anakin. "If you're still alive after the race, come see me, boy," he snapped, his wings flicking as he vanished into the shadows, leaving Anakin blinking in confusion atop the giant beast, Padmé steady behind him. He turned to his older brother, owlish and unsure, and asked, "Did I do something wrong?" Revan simply shook his head. "Number." Revan gave his little brother a confident grin, promising answers after the race once Anakin left that smug dug in the dust. The younger mirrored the smirk, both ready for the moment ahead. Meanwhile, Padmé's voice echoed in Revan's mind, teasing him about his secrecy and hinting she would have raced herself had she known what was truly at stake. Standing nearby, the bonded boy reminded the cloaked girl beside Anakin of his brother's skills, then pressed her on a detail who claimed Anakin had never finished a race? With a knowing glance toward Qui-Gon, Padmé answered simply, "He did." She was light in human form, gentle even to those who'd owned her. No hate, no vengeance. If someone starved, she would give them her food, so long as her sons had eaten. She had taught them this. The galaxy's true sickness was that no one paused to help, so he made his choice. A quiet flick of his fingers, the Force obeyed, and the cube landed on red. If the boy won the race, their mother would walk free. But beside him, another presence stirred, subtle, cloaked in Jedi calm. The cube tipped again, unnaturally. It now showed blue. His heart dropped. He had gambled everything to give his family a future beyond dust and chains. But the Force had chosen a different path. "You won the toss, Outlander," came the sneer, sealing the moment. After overhearing him mutter something beneath his breath, the handmaiden fell silent, her expression unreadable. Revan, catching the shift in her gaze, asked if she was all right. Her response was gentle but piercing. She felt sad. The moment cracked something inside him. He began to apologize, the edges of guilt surfacing. But before the words could fully form, the brunette cut him off, leaving the apology suspended, unfinished, in the air between them. The silence that followed spoke louder than any confession, as if both sensed that sorrow wasn't caused by the moment it had been waiting there all along. Revan tried to deflect, insisting he wasn't sad, brushing off emotion with sharp retorts and a distant gaze, but Padmé saw right through him. Her voice cracked like glass under pressure, accusing him of hiding behind silence while she had once leaned on him in her own despair. She called him out, naming the ache he refused to acknowledge, the heartbreak he buried under layers of control. Revan dodged again, feigning ignorance, eyes drifting toward Qui-Gon, speaking to his younger brother, anything to avoid the truth Padmé had spoken aloud. Is this conversation helpful so far? Revan looked past his brother and met Padmé's eyes, soft, questioning, insistent, and finally let the truth fall from his lips with a weight that crushed his chest. He had freed Anakin. Padmé blinked, surprised by his sorrow, asking why he wasn't celebrating. After all, wasn't saving his brother worth everything? That's when Revan admitted it, he sold HK. Her voice dropped to a whisper of realization. He hadn't just given up a droid, he had given up something he'd built, protected, maybe even loved like a son. She offered quiet sympathy, but Revan's storm gray eyes stayed locked in the distance. That wasn't what haunted him most, though it ached, he knew he'd have to live with it. He said it while thinking of his loyal droid, but just because he claimed he'd trade Anakin for the machine didn't mean he ever planned to. Illusion, after all, was the Jedi's oldest trick. If the Toydarian believed HK was his, then Revan could free his brother and still keep his protector watching over their mother, if the race was won. So another bet was made. Red for their mother's freedom, blue for Revan's. The cube hit blue. Padmé finished the thought for him, sensing why his mood had turned so hollow. Yet even with that outcome, she knew his mother would never have let her children remain in her place. Revan's voice sharpened. His mother deserved joy. Enslaved since childhood, she had earned the right to choose her own path. And in secret, with a twist of the Force, he had tried to rig fate, he made it land on red. Revan didn't need to say it out loud. He let the dice speak, nudging fate with the Force so it landed blue. The girl looked at him, confused. Why would he do that? Revan stood with arms crossed, gaze steady. He wants me to go with him to Coruscant, to talk to the Jedi about my dreams. Her brow knit, curiosity sparking in her eyes. What's so special about your dream? He gave a faint smirk. I'll tell you later, he replied, prompting a small pout from her. Besides, people are going to think we're weird if we just keep staring at each other. She sighed, all right. Padmé crossed her arms, still pouting, but gave a reluctant nod. But this isn't over, Revan. He tilted his head, eyes glinting with dry humor. Clearly, we know who wears the trousers in this dynamic. Her shout of his name only deepened his laugh as her cheeks flared crimson. Hours later, engines roared across the Boonta track while racers made their final checks beneath Jabba's watchful glare. Anakin, slipping through the crowd, found his racer and, more importantly, his mother waiting with Padmé and Revan, who fine-tuned the craft's final adjustments. She pulled her son into a fierce hug, her face lined by sun and time but steady as ever. He held her tightly, comforted by that familiar strength. When she gently pushed him back, her tired eyes found his calm and resolute, the quiet courage of someone who had let go many times but never completely. He could see it, she was trying to be strong, the way she always was on race day, but behind her eyes flickered something fragile, fear. She clutched his shoulders tightly, her voice barely holding steady, "Be safe, Ani," and as if afraid letting go would make him vanish, she held on just a moment longer. Over her shoulder, his older brother stepped in, resting a steady hand on her, anchoring them both. "He'll be fine, Mom," came the calm reassurance, followed by a glance toward the youngest Skywalker. "Right, Ani?" A heartbeat passed. Then a gulp, a stiff nod, and a cracked voice. "Right!" Shmi gave her eldest a reassuring smile, then stepped away, leaving the brothers surrounded by a roaring sea of spectators, but sharing a moment of rare quiet. Revan, cool as ever, eyed his little brother. "Nervous?" he asked. Anakin stood straighter, admitting, a little, just as he caught sight of Padmé moving gracefully through the crowd with her mismatched entourage. The weight of the galaxy clung to his small shoulders, and he feared failure not just in the race, but in front of her. Revan, ever the older sibling with a smirk ready, raised an eyebrow. "Anybody? Or a certain girl?" he teased, watching Anakin squirm, cheeks burning red. It wasn't subtle the way Anakin lit up when she was near, how he clutched at every moment to hold her hand, showing off his droid, stealing glances when she wasn't looking, and turning away in a flurry of blushes when she was, "What?" Anakin stammers, cheeks flaring like a reactor coil about to blow his brother somehow found out about her. "I don't know what you're talking about, I just don't want to let Qui-Gon down is all," he insists, voice cracking like a faulty droid. His brother just smirks, tossing out a sly, "Whatever you say, Ani," and that earns him a death glare sharp enough to slice through Durasteel. Then comes the bomb. "Guess you won't mind if I ask her out then." Anakin's glare collapses into a full scowl. "You can't!" And just like that, the sandstorm inside him erupts. "What?" Anakin stammers, cheeks flaring like a reactor coil about to blow his brother somehow found out about her. I don't know what you're talking about. I just don't want to let Qui-Gon down is all, he insists, voice cracking like a faulty droid. His brother just smirks, tossing out a sly, "Whatever you say, Ani," and that earns him a death glare sharp enough to slice through Durasteel. Then comes the bomb. Guess you won't mind if I ask her out then. Anakin's glare collapses into a full scowl. "You can't!" And just like that, the sandstorm inside him erupts. Revan promised him he was free now. Not because the race was over, but because Revan had already made the trade, already made the choice. As soon as Anakin crossed the finish line, they'd march to Watto and have the device removed. Anakin blinked in disbelief, his voice cracking, "I'm free?" Revan grinned, sharp and certain, letting the P and yep pop like a burst of sun through storm clouds. But before the moment could settle, she emerged from the crowd Padmé, calm and radiant, drawing close like a breeze before dawn. She leaned in, pressing a kiss to Anakin's cheek so softly it silenced even his breath. A lump rose in his throat, unbidden, but there was no room for words. Her voice was barely audible, a whisper threaded with gravity. "You carry all our hopes." And Anakin, surrounded by engines and destiny, nodded with steel in his eyes. "I won't let you down." He thought his brother would stay, he hoped, even promised. But Anakin's voice trembled when he said it. "No, you won't." Confused and hurt, Revan blinked, asking if he had done something wrong, if he was being sent away to a new master. The question struck like a quiet storm, but instead of answering with sorrow, Revan placed a hand in his brother's dusty blonde hair, ruffling it with a smile that masked deeper pain. "I would never give you away," he said. In that moment, beneath the desert's rising heat, brotherhood spoke louder than chains. Revan gave his word Anakin would be free. Not someday, now. Once the race was done, he'd take him straight to Watto and have the bomb removed. "I'm free?" Anakin asked, barely believing. "Yep," Revan replied, the P popping with mischief. But before emotion could settle, Padmé emerged from the crowd, her smile cutting through the noise. She leaned in and kissed Anakin's cheek, gentle and warm, stirring a lump in his throat he didn't know was there. Her whisper, almost lost in the wind, carried the weight of their world. "You carry all our hopes." And with quiet strength he answered, "I won't let you down." He swallowed hard, voice catching as his heart pounded and her breath warmed his skin. She studied him, long and quiet, before leaning back with a sly smile. "Don't I get a kiss?" he asked, half joking, though his eyes searched hers. She rolled her eyes at him with that same smile, while the younger one beside them wasn't smiling at all. His scowl said it loud. Revan had just shattered the moment. "What for?" she teased, those dark eyes twinkling as she tilted her head, playful and sharp. "Annie's the one doing all the work." And just like that, Revan reminded her, "But I built the pod." As she pulled away from the weight of Revan's silent thoughts and drifted toward the edge of the platform where others waited, a young voice broke the tension. Anakin, wide-eyed and earnest, declared his future with her, a vow too big for his frame. Revan's gaze had lingered too long on her silhouette, but the spell cracked with a dry chuckle from above. He wasn't even through his first growth spurt. The moment soured fast as a shadow slithered in Sebulba, all sneer and stink, oozed venom toward Anakin, calling him bonded scum, daring him not to survive. Then he turned to Revan, lips curling with menace, as if writing a farewell in dust and spit. But Revan didn't flinch, just stared him down and promised, with fire in his voice, that this goodbye would never come. "You've given a beautifully specific image prompt structured like a triptych, and based on the content of the uploaded file talk6.txt, it appears your aesthetic leans toward a spiritual documentary times mythic realism style, deeply symbolic and emotionally resonant. Here's a visual breakdown for generating the image in that style, incorporating your segments and tone. Triptych concept: Einstein through the veil of time. Panel 1, the mystic physicist. Setting: a dark, timeless study room. Faint outlines of blackboard and ancient shelves. Einstein, full body, adult, worn clothes, chalk in hand. Light, a swirl of glowing chalk dust mimicking the space-time curve rises behind him like a silent aurora. Face, cosmic. Light illuminates his face, partially one-eye catching starlight, deeply focused. Mood, meditative, solemn. You feel like time is pausing around him. Panel 2, The Wandering Child. Setting: a quiet 19th century room, soft golden light from a window. Einstein, child, upper body, seated on floor, holding a small compass in cupped hands. Eyes: filled with awe, his world just shifted. Mood: eye-level intimacy. You're in the moment of awakening. Panel 3, the moral echo. Setting: high shot, Einstein, a black silhouette before a burning horizon shaped like a mushroom cloud. Backdrop: faint, ghost-like musical notes and water-like ink tears blending into the sky. Mood: haunting, a soul burdened by the consequences of thought. Style: cinematic, spiritual tension. Reflection of legacy and guilt. Would you like me to now generate this image in AI using this structure and the cinematic comic noir Twin Suns Edition visual style as a baseline, or do you want it split into 3 separate images for clarity and use? Anakin stood firm, eyes locked in quiet defiance as the Dug sneered with venom, promising to bury him beneath the dust of the racetrack. The taunts dripped with cruelty, music of screams, a grave in the dirt, but Revan cut through it with biting calm, mocking the Dug's empty boasts. He called out the cheat behind the swagger, exposing the truth everyone knew. The Dug had never won without deceit. The Dug's eyes burned back, spitting a warning that only the strongest survive, gaze shifting to the two brothers like a predator sizing up prey, and the weak perish. The words hang in the dusty air as the rival's sneer sharpens. And yet you're still here, Kung. Revan's eyes flash, but he doesn't flinch. The Dug has baited him, and he takes it with silent fury. Why don't you get out of here before I make you? The other leans in, mockingly intrigued. Oh, do entertain me, bound one. What exactly will you do to make me? Revan's smirk returns, colder now. Well, I may not dine with Lord Jabba, but I'm pretty sure he wouldn't love you ruining the race he bankrolled. That hits. The Dug's nostrils flare, eyes narrowing. But before he can bark back, Revan lets the silence sharpen the threat until the Dug hisses, vowing venomously, if word gets back to Jabba, I'll be paying your mother a visit. Is there a problem here? Qui! Gon's voice cut through the tension like a blade, stern, calm, but alert as his hand landed on Revan's shoulder, sensing a dangerous fury rising that echoed ghosts of past failures. The Dug, snarling with disdain, fired back. Nothing you need concern yourself with, human. Before stomping away, casting one last venomous glance at Revan. Watching him retreat, Qui-Gon raised a brow. What was that about? He asked, eyes tracking the swaggering menace. Anakin shrugged with a hint of weariness, just his usual scare tactic. But Revan's jaw clenched, and Anakin turned toward him, confused and a little frustrated. Why did you have to antagonize him? Revan's answer came sharp and low, burning with protective fire. He threatened your life, Ani. Do you like this personality? Is there a problem here? Qui! Gon's voice cut through the tension like a blade, stern, calm, but alert as his hand landed on Revan's shoulder, sensing a dangerous fury rising that echoed ghosts of past failures. The Dug, snarling with disdain, fired back, nothing you need concern yourself with, human, before stomping away, casting one last venomous glance at Revan. Watching him retreat, Qui-Gon raised a brow. What was that about? He asked, eyes tracking the swaggering menace. Anakin shrugged with a hint of weariness, just his usual scare tactic. But Revan's jaw clenched, and Anakin turned toward him, confused and a little frustrated. Why did you have to antagonize him? Revan's answer came sharp and low, burning with protective fire. He threatened your life, Ani. Do you like this personality? He ruffled his little brother's hair with a crooked grin and barked, Make us proud and wreck that jerk for me, will ya? Anakin beamed with that signature spark and shot back, Do you even have to ask? Before hurling himself into a hug. Pressed against his brother's chest, his voice muffled as he whispered, Thanks for freeing me. Then came the hope, raw and wide-eyed. With the race money, we can free you and Mom finally leave Tatooine like we always dreamed. But Revan's heart twisted. He knew the truth, Anakin didn't. Even with a win, their mother wouldn't walk free. The dice hadn't rolled her way. Only the boys would be unshackled. She would remain behind, owned, while they chased a freedom that came chained in guilt. Is there a problem here? Why? Gon's voice cut through the tension like a blade, stern, calm, but alert as his hand landed on Revan's shoulder, sensing a dangerous fury rising that echoed ghosts of past failures. The Dug, snarling with disdain, fired back, "Nothing you need concern yourself with, human," before stomping away, casting one last venomous glance at Revan. Watching him retreat, Qui-Gon raised a brow. "What was that about?" he asked, eyes tracking the swaggering menace. Anakin shrugged with a hint of weariness. Just his usual scare tactic. But Revan's jaw clenched, and Anakin turned toward him, confused and a little frustrated. "Why did you have to antagonize him?" Revan's answer came sharp and low, burning with protective fire. "He threatened your life, Ani. Do you like this personality?" The Jedi Master's voice cut through the tension with calm precision. "Are you all set, Ani?" The boy gave a single nod, eyes burning with focus, no longer a child, but something on the edge of becoming. The Master watched him a moment longer, then spoke again, words laced with quiet urgency. "Remember, concentrate on the moment. Feel, don't think. Trust your instincts, they will serve you well." A hand rested gently on Anakin's shoulder, not as a command, but a benediction. Not from a warrior, but a man who had seen too much and still hoped. "May the Force be with you, Annie." And with that, the Jedi turned away, his figure retreating toward the viewing platform, leaving Anakin Skywalker standing alone, small against the roar of the coming storm, but unshaken. "Is there a problem here?" Qui-Gon's voice cut through the tension like a blade stern, calm, but alert as his hand landed on Revan's shoulder, sensing a dangerous fury rising that echoed ghosts of past failures. The Dug, snarling with disdain, fired back, "Nothing you need concern yourself with, human," before stomping away, casting one last venomous glance at Revan. Watching him retreat, Qui-Gon raised a brow. "What was that about?" he asked, eyes tracking the swaggering menace. Anakin shrugged with a hint of weariness, just his usual scare tactic. But Revan's jaw clenched, and Anakin turned toward him, confused and a little frustrated. "Why did you have to antagonize him?" Revan's answer came sharp and low, burning with protective fire. "He threatened your life, Annie. Do you like this personality?" He tried to calm his mother, sensing how race day always wore her down. This was clearly where Anakin belonged, Qui-Gon observed, though his words to her, "All we can do now is hope for the best," offered little peace. No one needed reminding of what was at stake if the boy failed. Padmé, cloaked in doubt, muttered how reckless Jedi could be, only to be swiftly interrupted by the rogue master, who coolly reminded her that the Queen trusted his judgment, though his gaze, pointed and steady, fell solely on her. She squinted her dark brown eyes and shot a glare straight at the Jedi Master, her voice low and sharp. "You presume too much." The boy beside her couldn't help but laugh, tossing out a teasing, "Somebody's grouchy." Without missing a beat, she redirected that deadly stare from the Jedi to the younger Skywalker. "You'll have to do better than that, Your Majesty." That stopped her cold. Caught off guard, she faltered he had seen through her disguise. She had masked her identity carefully, but he had caught the slip during their earlier conversation. "I've been watching you," he said, calm but certain. Her brows lifted. "You sound like a pervert." Revan didn't flinch when she cut in. He kept his focus, his tone steady, like she hadn't said a word. He admitted he'd been watching her, mimicking even, studying every motion and word. Sure, Naboo and Tatooine had their differences, but no handmaiden ever moved like that. The real crack in the disguise came when she almost said she was a prin, clearly about to say princess. She tried to push back, asking if a queen would dress in rags like hers, but Revan's eyes caught hers, sharp and certain he never said queen. He said princess. And now, it all made sense. The weight in her voice, the caution in her gaze. He saw it. He named it. Queen Amidala. She squinted her dark brown eyes and shot a glare straight at the Jedi Master, her voice low and sharp. "You presume too much." The boy beside her couldn't help but laugh, tossing out a teasing, "Somebody's grouchy." Without missing a beat, she redirected that deadly stare from the Jedi to the younger Skywalker. "You'll have to do better than that, Your Majesty." That stopped her cold. Caught off guard, she faltered he had seen through her disguise. She had masked her identity carefully, but he had caught the slip during their earlier conversation. "I've been watching you," he said, calm but certain. Her brows lifted. "You sound like a pervert." She looked at him with a gentle smile, and in that fleeting glance, he suddenly understood why someone like Anakin could be so captivated by her there was no denying her beauty. But it wasn't just that. He was certain he had seen her before, not in a dream, but somewhere real, her voice echoing back to him with a slightly different accent. A flash of memory, a tight brown and cream bodysuit surged to the surface, and he quickly banished the image. Revan eyed the disguised queen, voice edged with suspicion, wondering aloud if this entire act was just a clever trap to expose his ship before she and her crew made off with everything. Her smile turned coy, teasing that unless he was in the market for dresses, he'd leave sorely disappointed. Revan quipped with a smirk, playing along. "Do you think it'll bring out the color of my eyes?" And the quiet giggle that echoed in his mind almost made the desert heat bearable. As the engines roared and the Boonta Eve race blazed forward, none of them noticed their hands still joined. Anakin, despite a rough start, surged ahead and claimed victory, knocking Sebulba out of the race after the Dug tried to sabotage him. Even Shmi, usually quiet as dusk, cheered with tearful joy at her son's first win. Back in the hangar, Qui-Gon moved with purpose, about to bargain for the freedom of both Revan and Anakin. Soon, they'd be unbound, leaving behind the dust of their past. And with midi-chlorian counts rivaling legends, the question whispered louder than ever. Which of them had the Force truly chosen? "You swindled me!" The Toydarian bursts into a furious flutter, eyes blazing as he accuses the Jedi of rigging the outcome. "You knew the boy would win. Somehow, you knew." But the Jedi, unshaken and half smiling, offers only a calm reminder. Whenever you gamble, my friend, you must be prepared to lose. And today wasn't your day. The smirk fades quickly, replaced by business. The parts must be delivered to the main hangar immediately, and the bonded boys released. He'll bring them to the shop later, along with the droid. Is this conversation helpful so far? Watto shoved his snout right into the Jedi's face and barked, "You can take the kid, but not Revan," his voice shaking with outrage. It wasn't a fair bet. But the Jedi didn't flinch. He stepped back, eyes narrowing into a look so cold it could freeze a sun, the kind of stare his old master would have nodded at in silent approval. "Would you care to discuss this with the Hutts?" he asked, voice calm but razor-edged. "I'm sure they'd be happy to settle the matter." Watto recoiled like he'd been slapped, his glare sharp with resentment. No, I want no more of your tricks," he snapped, waving him off like swatting flies from a wound. "Take the boys and be gone from here." The order cut through the tension as the figure turned his back and vanished into the sky. Left behind, the Jedi descended silently to the now abandoned racetrack, where droids scavenged through twisted wreckage like ants over bone. Among them, Revan stood alone by his battered pod, fingers tracing damage as if reading a scarred memory. From the shadows, Qui-Gon watched, surrounded by Padmé, Shmi, and the droids, his mind turning inward. Anakin crept over, guilt in his steps, and Revan's glance over his shoulder held no judgment, only quiet recognition. As the brothers reunited, the Jedi's thoughts returned to those impossible blood samples. 20,000. Not fathered, but formed. Conceived not by man, but by the Force itself. Two boys, both placed, not born. And as the sun set over the dust-choked plains, only one question haunted him. Which of them was the prophecy's true design? Buried in an ancient holocron once found during his training under a former master, he'd read the prophecy like a tale out of Legend One Life, born to bring balance. Most dismissed it as myth, but now the question pulsed louder than ever. Was it Anakin or Revan? With their departure from the desert world looming, the story held back a beat not for spectacle, but for soul. A goodbye to the mother who shaped them couldn't be rushed. Next, they would head toward the shining towers of Coruscant, where destinies collide and shadows stretch. And yes, a masked hunter with burning eyes would soon step into the light. As for skipping the famous race, well, it had nothing new to offer this time, and Revan was never in it anyway. This story, it's his. Buried in an ancient holocron once found during his training under a former master, he'd read the prophecy like a tale out of Legend One Life, born to bring balance. Most dismissed it as myth, but now the question pulsed louder than ever. Was it Anakin or Revan? With their departure from the desert world looming, the story held back a beat not for spectacle, but for soul. A goodbye to the mother who shaped them couldn't be rushed. Next, they would head toward the shining towers of Coruscant, where destinies collide and shadows stretch. And yes, a masked hunter with burning eyes would soon step into the light. As for skipping the famous race, well, it had nothing new to offer this time. And Revan was never in it anyway. This story, it's his.